The National Veterans Memorial and Museum began with a vision from the late Senator John Glenn, who understood the value of telling and sharing the story of our veterans. From the initial view, the architecture impresses upon visitors the importance of what lies within. Seeming to rise organically from the earth, the building itself is a symbol of our nation's veterans and their resilient spirit and unending commitment to making this country stronger. Once inside the museum, visitors embark on a narrative journey, following exhibitions that focus on the servicemen and women and their families. Individual stories and shared experiences are illustrated through personal artifacts, quotes, letters, photographs, and powerful films of veterans telling their unique story in their own words. The National Veterans Memorial and Museum. It's more than a museum. It's the new home of the brave. Plan your visit today.
Well, good morning and welcome to Rally Point. This is our monthly series that brings veteran topics and programs and veterans themselves front and center. So today we've got a great well, let me back up. So my name's Bill Butler. I'm the Chief of Staff here at the National Veterans Memorial and Museum. Our topic today is finding your tribe while navigating PTSD and moral injuries. And this is fitting with June's theme of PTSD Awareness Month. And I believe that the program today is going to be a great opportunity for us to have an honest conversation about the battles that many service members face, as well as a chance to hear about an organization that fights for veterans and tries to reduce the isolation while promoting connectivity and connections to either veterans or military members as they're struggling with whatever demons they're bringing back from deployments in their service. So today I'm joined by Major Tom Schueman, United States Marine Corps. Tom is the founder of PB Abbate. He's received a bachelor's degree from Loyola University in Chicago, master's degrees from Georgetown and the U.S. Naval War College. Tom's got multiple combat deployments, including one to Sangin District, which at the time was considered the most dangerous place in Afghanistan, if not the world. And now Tom's an English instructor at the United States Naval Academy and doing great things, continuing to serve and continuing to inspire young men and women into service greater than self. So we're honored he's with us and really looking forward to learning more about PB Abbate, the organization that you've created and founded and are leading. So we'll get right into it. So Tom, if you just tell us a little bit more about who you are, why you decided to serve, what inspired you to join the Marine Corps, and just kind of your origin story.
Sir, thanks for having me. I'm from Chicago, grew up on the south side of the city. My mom was a Chicago cop, and I did not grow up playing with GI Joes. Didn't have a Marines poster on my wall. I never really considered service until I was a sophomore in high school, and 9/11 happened. And when the planes hit the towers, I just said, that was my first awareness that there were people in the world that wanted to do harm to our country. At that point, it was the age of innocence. I was not cognizant that was an actual reality. And then I said, well, if that is a thing, I should do something about it. And so the idea of service first took root 9/11, 2001. I didn't know what that service would look like. I just knew that I wanted to do something about it. I probably couldn't have even told you what the 4 branches of service were at the time, well, now 5. So I went through high school, and I also started to gain an appreciation. General Mattis has a quote that says, "America's like a bank. Some people have to make deposits," and I feel like my mother was someone who made a lot of deposits. She was a Chicago cop for 27 years, single mom, raising 2 kids, and she provided opportunities to my sister and I that she never dreamed or hoped of for herself. And through her selfless service and sacrifice, I had a chance to do something. And I felt like, that's pretty special, that this woman who didn't even have a high school degree could work really hard and provide something for somebody else. And I said, I think that's probably unique and special to this country. And so I should pay into that. And so there was a civic duty aspect of what called me to serve. And then there was the actual 9/11. And so I did our OTC. I thought maybe I would be, I don't like to tell people this, but I thought maybe I would be a Navy JAG because my grandma liked Tom Cruise. And the only thing that I knew was A Few Good Men. And that was like my only exposure. And I had spent my high school summers going to little constitutional law camps. And so I was really interested in law. And, but by the end of my first week of orientation in ROTC, I saw how the Marine options were, the seniors who were going to be commissioned as Marines, and the Navy. And I just said, I think maybe I like, so that was kind of my first step into the idea of wanting to be a Marine. And I still didn't really know what that meant until I got to TBS, and we went on our first field exercise, and it was very cold. It was about 15 degrees. We were Alpha Company, and many people said they wanted to be infantry Marines. And then after that first field exercise, few people said they wanted to be infantry Marines. And I said, well, if everybody else doesn't want to do that thing, I want to do that thing. And so that was my first idea of wanting to be an infantry Marine. And then it really wasn't until I was running wild in the woods at the infantry officer course that I knew without a doubt that this is a calling. This is what I'm passionate about. And so something clicked there in the woods out in Quantico during the infantry officers course that I finally said, I've been kind of stumbling my way through this thing. And now I know actually that I'm right where I'm supposed to be. And then I was able to validate that in combat. And that's a very rewarding experience too. And so that was kind of how things started, and they took off from there.
So, obviously from your background and the degrees that you have, education's very important to you. So is that just something that your mother instilled in you and your sibling, or is that something that you just innately had and understood the importance of education and reading and getting good grades and working hard?
So I wish I could say that education was always important to me. My mom she'd get home and every night after she made dinner for my sister and I before bed, when some of my earliest memories as a kid would be, she read the entire Chronicles of Narnia to me. And then she read The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings series. And now being a dad myself with 3 kids and reading bedtime stories, I'm very impressed by my mom's patience and dedication to doing that. And so I think I always had a real love for reading. I got to college, and I'm first generation college student. I first person in my family to go to school, and I didn't take advantage of that opportunity to develop myself as a thinker and intellectually as much as I would have liked to as an undergrad. Fortunately, I got a chance to remediate, and I'll tell you that one, when I checked in as a company commander in the 29 Palms, 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines Lehman Company, my CO, who I really respected, said, one of my greatest regrets was that I didn't start really getting serious about my own professional military education and personal education until too late. There's too many books to read, and I'm already, behind. And I said, well, man, this guy's really pretty smart. And if he's saying that, maybe I should take note of that. And so I developed a professional military education plan within my company. We were call sign Lucky. So I had Lucky PME program, and every month I signed a new book to the staff and O, and they hated it. But it was those discussions about whatever Fields of Fire or whatever novel or Grant's memoir or a podcast that we'd listen to, there was always really great kind of discussions that came out of that. And I was deployed to Australia, and I said, you've only been reading memoirs and war books for the last couple of years. Maybe you should try to read something else. And so I Googled famous works of fiction. And the first thing that came up was Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. I read that and I said, oh yeah, I do. I really do like reading in general. And at the same time, a message came out, and the message said, we need someone to come teach literature at the Naval Academy. I had a book in my hand, Charles Dickens. There was a message that said we need someone to teach literature. And I thought, maybe that's me. I didn't know anything about the Naval Academy. I didn't study English in my undergrad, but never been a guy that's been shy to just shoot my shot. And so I threw some crap at the wall, and no one said the Marine Corps is perfect. And the next thing you know, somehow, some way, I found myself at Georgetown, completing a 2-year master's degree program in 1 year. I was out of my depth. And but I wanted to get out of my comfort zone. I knew that I spent 10 years in the infantry. I've been an infantry platoon commander, infantry XO. I'd gone to recon. I've been at JTAC. I'd gone to the School of Infantry. I said, you're just a hammer right now, and you look at the whole world like a nail. You need some different ways to see the world, and you need to get out of your comfort zone. And so I felt like showing up to Georgetown, I felt like it would just be, hey, pick a book that you like, you read it, you write a little 5-page report on it. That was not at all what my grad school experience was like. Instead, I felt like I was at the MLB All-Star game. Randy Johnson was throwing 100-mile-per-hour heaters, and I should have been T-ball. And I said, I have arrived at the wrong place. This is supposed to be English, but the words that we're using don't sound like any English words that I know. What is literary criticism? What is this stuff that we're doing here? And but I got what I was seeking in that I learned how to read in new ways, and to close read, and to write. And in that, when you study the humanities specifically, I think you're studying what it means to be human, and you really kind of builds your empathy. It builds, you get additional lenses, and these lenses allow you to kind of see the world in different ways, because that literature can kind of take you into those places. And then through an opportunity to teach for a couple of years at the Naval Academy, teaching English, my biggest thing at a place like the Naval Academy, where everything is uniform, everything is on a strict schedule. You're told when to wake up, when to go to bed, when to study, but what I have found as an officer out in the fleet, it's very dynamic and it's very uncertain. And I wanted my students at the Naval Academy to engage their brain. That was my one goal, is if for 5 minutes today you could engage your brain, that's a win for me. Critical thinking is not a crime here. And when you're in a place where everybody chops, they square the corners, they chop down the halls, they chop up the stairs, they all yell the chow hall menu, you might be inclined at a place like that to not try to think too much, because you might go crazy. And I said, no. The fleet and your Marines and sailors need you to be a thinking officer. And so, I taught poetry. I started to write poetry. I've been I actually just took a course at the War College called Pen and Sword, which was kind of a little bit of a maybe not fair, because it was essentially the course that I taught at the Naval Academy. I was then as a student, and we were actually looking at a lot of the same texts that I taught. But it was great to kind of just, I mean, anytime the Marine Corps is going to pay me to read Henry V, I'm going to take that opportunity. And so, yeah, I think when you're through learning, you're through. And you know, the idea of any leader or any professional is you got to be a lifelong learner. And if you ever think you know everything, like, that's a pretty good signal you're about to fall off the cliff. And so I've been taking a very humble approach to learning, and it's been super rewarding. And I feel very, very fortunate that for the last 4 years, the Marine Corps pay me to train my brain. And so it's been pretty incredible.
Yeah, it sounds like a super opportunity for you. And then, you know, in all of your spare time, you've apparently been able to write a book, and you're getting ready to release it this summer. And so it's called Always Faithful. Can you just tell us, you know, what the premise of the book is, what it's about, and how hard that's been to write and be a dad and a husband and an instructor at the Naval Academy and a student at the War College?
Yes, sir. So in 2010, as you mentioned, I was a platoon commander in Afghanistan, and we were involved in the Battle of Singin. 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines had 25 killed in action, 250 wounded. I had 19 casualties in my platoon of 35. It was a pretty dangerous place. And through all that, I had an interpreter who really became one of my Marines, became one of us. And as you know, a solid interpreter is worth his weight in gold. And he did so much more than just translate. You know, he at one point ran through an IED field, tackled a Taliban commander who was coordinating an ambush. When I had multiple casualties, he picked up a rifle and held security. He was undoubtedly saved my life and helped us in a number of ways be successful on that deployment. And so before he was my interpreter, he was an Army contractor in the Korengal. And then after he worked for my battalion, he actually went back to his home province of Kunar, which I know you're familiar with. And he spent 2 years at Fob Price, maybe, in Kunar, and working again with the Army. So he had 4 years of U.S. service, and the United States came out with a program called the Special Immigration Visa to support Afghan interpreters, which they had give 1 year of service. And then the deal was, it was in the contract, black and white, very clear, that if they had 1 year of service to the U.S., they would receive a visa. And Zach had 4 years of service. And so starting in 2016, he and I started his application process to get him to America. And it was the bureaucracy and the paperwork. It was just we received rejection after rejection after rejection. And so after about 3 years of applying, reapplying, trying to provide the paperwork that they requested, we kind of gave up. And but when President Biden made the announcement in April of 21 that we would be out by the end of the summer, I sent Zach a message and I said, hey, what are the implications for you and your family if we're gone by the end of the summer? And he said, well, sorry, I just received another threat. I just got a letter to my father's house that they're still looking for me, and that they said if they find me, they're going to kill me and my family. So it means we'll be dead. And I said, okay, well, I better get to work. And I kind of had a guerrilla social media campaign where I used a social media platform that I have with about 50,000 followers. And I just put out a call to help and a call for support. I said, hey, I've got this guy. Here's the situation. If you think you can help, let me know. And before we knew it, I was meeting with congressmen and senators and attorneys and media. We were on the cover of the New York Times, on the cover of Chicago Sun-Times. Senator Durbin was talking to Secretary Blinken during his confirmation hearing and said, there's a Major Schueman. He's one of my constituents. He's on the cover of Chicago Sun-Times today, talking about his interpreter. Are you going to help him? And Secretary Blinken says, I know who Major Schueman is. I've read the article. I'm going to help him. And I'm thinking, okay, well, we're good. This is the Secretary of State. And what was so wild about all this is that, I mean, we had the highest levels of congressional support. We had 4-star generals, admirals, all advocating, trying to move this thing. And no matter, we're on the New York Times front cover, and no matter what we did, it did not advance his visa application. And a classmate of mine from the basic school had done an inter-service transfer to the Air Force, and he was flying for PJs for the Air Force. And I knew he was there, and after 2 failed rescue attempts where his children were almost killed, and he's now there for the 3rd time at the gate in Kabul. And it was very close to when the Abbey Gate attack occurred. And I just said, hey, this is his 3rd time to the airport. The last 2 times his kids have been involved in crossfire. I need you to help. And doing this over Signal, and my buddy was in the talk and said, hey, I'm in the talk. I can't go outside the wire. And I said, man, this guy's life depends on it. And Jared, I need you to do me a favor. And so he grabbed some PJs, jumped the wall, and in a very harrowing rescue, pulled my interpreter, his 4 kids, and his wife into HKA. And I never, I didn't think that I would write this book. I didn't think that, I think there's maybe going to be a movie about it. And none of that was ever kind of, it was just a promise had been made, and I had a duty to honor that promise. And it was that was it. It was just trying to keep a promise to a friend and a brother. And it just happened to unfold in a very dramatic fashion, which I wish it had not. I wish there was nothing to write the book about. I would have been much preferred. But I think this idea of what it means to be always faithful is something I'm really, really interested in. And I'm so interested in this. That's the Marine Corps ethos, semper fidelis, always faithful. And when I think of what that means, I know of some testaments of young men who were always faithful, and it's so easy to be faithful sometimes. It's so easy to actually be faithful most of the time. I think it's when you are tested in those extremes, when you put the semper in the fidelis, when you put the always, to be 100% faithful. Now that I think is something truly exceptional. And so it has to be more than just a phrase. It has to be an ethos. It has to be a conviction. And I can tell you, on November 9th, I was woken up by my company commander with the news that Robert Kelly had been killed. He was a fellow platoon commander, General Kelly's son. And so I was supposed to lead a patrol that morning. I was right about to step off, and I found out. I said, maybe I'm not in the best headspace to lead this patrol. My squad leader said, it's no problem. It's just a local security patrol. We got it, sir. And they took a casualty on that patrol. And as they were trying to return to base, they kept coming under fire. And so they called and said, we need the quick reaction force. So I run out the gate with one of my squads, and we fight our way out. We get that squad back. And as we're about to head back to base, we get ambushed. And as I came together with my squad leader, and my platoon sergeant was also on the patrol, my squad leader stepped on the IED, and the 3 of us were injured. And once I kind of came to and looked down, my squad leader's missing a leg, my platoon sergeant's bleeding out the ears, and We get my squad leader bandaged up and treated, and get my platoon sergeant treated, and I was carrying the litter. I was at the head of the litter, the stretcher that we're carrying my squad leader off, and as we're carrying him, he keeps turning to me. He's missing a leg, his other leg is mangled, and he keeps turning to me and says, "Sir, I know I'm heavy. Why don't you put me down and you guys just take a break for a minute?" And he was a big boy. He was probably a little bit out of height weight standards. He was, and but I said, "Humphrey, we're not going to put you down, buddy. I think we're going to try to get you out of this here." And he kept insisting the entire time we were carrying him off the battlefield. He would go on to die and then be resuscitated twice on the helicopter. He had to be resuscitated twice. And to think in the moments preceding his death that his thoughts were never with himself, that his thoughts were with his brothers, that is being always faithful up into quite literally your death. And really, one more kind of testimony of what this always faithful means to me, and kind of how it shaped me wanting to write the book with my interpreter. Arden Banagwa, Lance Corporal. So being a combat engineer in Sangin was the most dangerous job in the world. There were IEDs everywhere. We were just fighting our way through a minefield, and the engineers would walk in front of the squads and swing a metal detector. The issue is that many of the IEDs were non-metallic, and so you wouldn't actually, this metal detector didn't really do anything for you. Kilo Company, which I was part of, Kilo Company had a squad of engineers attached to it. 11 of the 12 engineers were either amputees or killed, and Arden Banagwa was number 11. And so here's this 18-year-old kid that 10 of his buddies have already been killed or are amputees. And every day, this young Marine puts his pack on, grabs his rifle, grabs that metal detector, and walks out and walks the point. Never once did he say, "Sir, could somebody else do this?" Never once did he say, "This is a lot of responsibility for an 18-year-old, sir. Do you think?" Nope. Grabbed his pack, grabbed his rifle, and walked out front, knowing that it was not a matter of if, but when. And he still went anyways, until his death, when he quite literally had his head blown off from an IED. And I've named my youngest son after Arden. And that to me is what this idea of being always faithful, knowing the outcome ahead of time and going anyways, that's the always and faithful. And so when it was time to do the work to get my interpreter out, it was like you said, you made a promise. Our nation made a promise. You made a promise. It's pretty challenging right now to uphold that promise. But does that mean that you're not going to do it? And you made a commitment, and you have to honor that. And so the book is about our journey, starting in 2000. Well, really kind of starts, in Chicago for me and Kunar for him. We intersect there in 2010, and then we go our divergent ways. We become dads and husbands, and then again in 2021, kind of the novel or the book culminates out there, and so it was an important story to tell, because I was able to share about 3-5's story, which I think is an important story to tell. It's important that people know that there are men like Arden Banagwa and Trey Humphrey, my squad leader, that are out there, and then and it adds a real human element to our country's longest war. It's really a story about friendship and brotherhood, and I think it's important to also have an Afghan attached to it. So I only wanted, when HarperCollins said, "Hey, we want to publish your book," I said only if Zach my interpreter can write it with me. And I wanted an Afghan voice to be able to tell that side of our nation's longest war, because they were there and they're still there. And so that's it was tough to write and to work on. I had 3 kids under 3. I had my 3rd kid while I was at the war college. Thankfully, I have an incredible wife and some late hours, but we had a credible team at HarperCollins and some assistants from some others, and so we made it happen.
So what's Zach doing now? Where are he and his family?
Yeah, so they went from Kunar to Kabul to Doha, Qatar, to Germany, to Philadelphia, to Fort Pickett in Virginia, and they were at a refugee camp in Virginia for a long time. And then Zach had a cousin who a year or 2 prior, who was also an interpreter, who landed in San Antonio. So the whole time he's saying, I want to go to San Antonio. I want to go to San Antonio. The whole time he's being told, you can go to San Antonio. And then in January of this year, they say, okay, we got your ticket out of the refugee camp here in Virginia. You're going to Minnesota. And in January, and a guy from Kunar, that was not what he had hoped for or planned. And so I went and I flew out to Minnesota. I finally got to meet him again and his family. And there was some paperwork that we were waiting on to come through, because if you pull anybody out of the resettlement process, it kind of puts them back to square one. And so we had to kind of let the resettlement process move, or he would be at risk of losing kind of some of the benefits and his like worker visa. He still doesn't have a visa, but he got like a worker's permit. But when I got to Minnesota, he let me know, like, hey, 2 days ago I got the worker's permit, so I have basically everything I need right now. And I said, okay, well, do you want to go to Texas? And he said yes. And so the next day I booked us a flight. We flew out the next day. It was, how many? 7 passengers, 12 bags, a stop in Colorado, and then we landed in San Antonio, and he moved in with his cousin. That's one of the great things about Afghans. They're just so family oriented. And we landed in San Antonio very late, and but I was compelled by his cousin and his family there that I had to come to dinner that night, even though it was like already midnight, and I was flying out very early the next morning. And through some of my connections, he now has a job working construction in San Antonio, and so he's out there doing drywall right now, probably sweating his butt off.
That's great. What a great story. We've got a couple of our interpreters. One is up in the Pacific Northwest. He'd gotten out before the end of Afghanistan, and then another one had a very similar process to what you described for Zach, but he ended up again linking up with a family member in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But it was him, his wife, his 5 kids, 1 backpack, and $150 in cash when they left Afghanistan, and that is it. So just the the commitment that they had to the men and women that they were serving with, us Americans, and then we would have 12 or 9 month deployments. We would come and go, but then to do that year after year after year, and to also endure the threats to not only you but your family, and to still continue to believe in us, believe in America, believe in the mission. It's just a testament to the indomitable spirit of some of the Afghan interpreters that we were fortunate enough to work with. So amazing stories for sure. Let's shift focus a little bit and get into the meat of the rally point and talk about PB Abbate, the organization that you founded. So if you could, and if you are willing to share the story of Matt Abbate, that'll set this up real well.
Sir, Matt Abbate, he was a sniper with 3.5. He was kind of one of those guys that is larger than life in a lot of ways. I fought with some really brave and courageous, incredible warriors, and then there was all of us, and then Matt Abbate was just operating on a different plane. And I was a pretty aggressive platoon commander, maybe sometimes too aggressive. And so sometimes I'd say, hey, like, let's go check out that village. And everybody like, let's not go check out that village. And then like, all right, well, anybody want to come with? Silence. And then Abbate would say, I'll go with you, sir. And as soon as Abbate would say, I'll go with you, all the rest of the hands were like, okay, well, like it's that's the kind of confidence that the Marines had in him, that he could change the whole battlefield, like he as one man. And he was what was really impressive about him is his humility, because every Marine, he's a tall, handsome, tattooed, from California, this sniper guy, and everybody wanted to be around him. Everybody was drawn to him, but he still would talk to anybody, treated everybody, with dignity and respect, and just a really great person, but just fierce warrior. And his Navy Cross citation, the day he was awarded the Navy Cross, he was out supporting. I was first platoon. He was out with second platoon at the time, and they had mass casualties. They had walked into a minefield, and the squad leader got shot. So the corpsman went to go help the squad leader, and the corpsman gets blown up. The next Marine goes to help the corpsman. That Marine gets blown up. Another Marine goes to help them. So in a rapid succession, you got 4 casualties, a couple of them killed in action from the IEDs, still under heavy fire. And everybody now recognizes that every time someone tries to move, they die. And so everybody kind of went firm. Everybody except one Marine. And that one Marine was Sergeant Abbate, who continued to move around, treat the casualties, single-handedly repel the enemy, grabbed the metal detector, swept the landing zone, which is not something he was trained to do, called in the medevac, landed the bird, got the killed in action and the wounded onto the helicopter. I mean, just incredible heroism. And so he ended up, he was killed in action on December 2nd, about a month and a half after that. And, I wanted to start this organization, and I wanted to part of our mission is to, honor the legacy of the fallen, and to live some of these principles that Sergeant Abbate lived by. And I could think of no one else I would want to name this after, and to be the namesake, and to continue to remember and to tell his story. And so I talked, I've maintained a relationship with his mom. And so when I kind of said, hey, I'm going to start this organization, think about naming it after Matt, would that be something that you'd support? And he's got a son, and his son is, a big believer and proponent of it. And so it's just, it's been special to be able to uphold it and keep his legacy alive.
What a great story, and God, what an inspiring warrior for sure. So if you would just talk a little bit about PB Abbate, the mission of the organization, the vision, and where you see this going.
Sure. It was April of 2020, and I had just put my daughter to bed, and I received a text from one of my Marines, said, hey, sir, I need you to call me. This is from one of my Marines from 2010. Now this was 2020. And he said, McLeod is no longer with us. And so McLeod was tough for me in a lot of ways. It's not the first Marine I've lost after the deployment, but McLeod, he had enlisted in 2008. He had scholarships to go play baseball, but he wanted to serve his country. And so he went to Iraq with 3.5, then he went on a MEU with 3.5. And so by the time I got him, he was, he was kind of a short timer, but he did the workup with us. And right before we deployed, he had a kid. And he said, sir, I was going to extend, but just had this kid. So I'm thinking I'm going to EAS. And I said, well, you're my best land nav guy. You're my best marksman in the platoon, my best team leader. But, do what you need to do. Maybe you could talk to your wife and reconsider. And he came back the next day and said, you know what, sir, you're my family too. And about a month later, he was a triple amputee. And as I came up to where he had been hit, one of my Marines hands me his fingers, which was a very surreal kind of moment. And I looked, and he didn't have, his arm was so mangled that I knew that he was not going to need those fingers anymore. And so then you have the dilemma of what do you do with these fingers? And so once I got the medevac going and the security set and everything, I'd always pull one of my Marines off and have them go hold security, because amputee takes several people to kind of fix up, especially a triple amputee. And he was dying, he was expiring. And I was trying to tell him, one of the more difficult conversations I've ever had in my life. I said, hey, McLeod, you gotta stay with us. Your son Desmond, you said you're going to coach his little league baseball team, and you still wanted to play baseball. And it's very hard to talk to a guy about how he's going to coach the little league baseball team when, he's missing his legs and his arm. But he found the will to live in that moment, and hung on. He ended up needing multiple surgeries every year for the last 10 years. And then he finally just lost that battle. And so, I've made these phone calls before, and I've had to write these letters before, but you're a little bit vulnerable when you're in your home and you just sing your daughter, Jesus loves you, before you put her to sleep. And then you come in and you kind of step into that ambush. And then within 30 days of that, 2 more of my Marines from when I was a company commander killed themselves. And so I said, kind of just like 9/11, it was like something needs to be addressed. And are you gonna answer the call? And so I said, well, let's try to define the problem. And so I started to read all the VA suicide reports, and I found that the leading proximal cause of veteran suicide were feelings of disconnectedness and isolation. Okay, so veterans who are feeling disconnected and isolated are most at risk. And then I found that almost twice as many veterans who are non-combat commit suicide as compared to combat veterans, and that there's no correlation between combat and veteran suicide. And I said, okay, so we know it's a veteran problem, and we know that it's the veterans who are feeling disconnected and isolated. Let me go look at the landscape of the veteran service organizations and find out what's out there that's getting all veterans in community and getting all veterans connected. And what I found was about 99% of the veteran resources out there are allocated to about 1% of the veteran population. That's our special forces and our combat wounded. And in a lot of ways, I was very encouraged by that the people who have made the greatest sacrifices, our Navy SEALs, our Green Berets, and our wounded, they're being well taken care of. And I think, thank God, that to me, that's a testament of a great nation that we've stepped up and made a commitment to take care of them. But I also think, okay, but there's about 17 million veterans, and it seems like we've really kind of started and stopped. And that's not what the data is telling us, though, And so, and when I started to think about it a little bit, I thought, well, of course, it's not just your infantryman or your special forces person who struggles with transition. It's your aircraft maintainer. It's your motor T truck driver. It's all these. It's the guy or gal who worked on the ship in the engine room, because they were a part of a team that kept an aircraft flying. They kept a submarine going. They kept a destroyer moving. They got troops, supplies, ammo, chow, water out to the, and so they felt like, hey, I'm part of a team that matters. And I'm part of a team where everybody to my left and right, if it came down to it, would die for the other person here. And if you look at a mission always has a task and a purpose, and in order to. And so I've got I've got a specified purpose, and I'm part of why do people use these? If you see, like, a lot of people will adopt this kind of language, squad goals, gang. Why do people kind of use these kind of terms of these tight-knit groups? It's because it's really important that people have. It's not a desire, it's a need. It's an inherent human need for tribe and connection. And in the Marine Corps and the Army and the Air Force and Navy, they provide that. They put you in a squad, they put you in a team, and then they say, here's your purpose. And so everybody who transitions is then, of course, going to have some identity crisis, because they were handed a piece of paper and they were still in their uniform, and they said, this rank, this name tape, that's not who. And it's like, well, I've been indoctrinated into this tribe. It's really all I know as in my adult life, and now I'm not that thing anymore. So of course there's going to be some identity crisis that occurs at every rank, in every MOS, in every service. And so I said, let's be radically inclusive, and let's make it that if you raise your right hand, you're in. No additional barriers to entry. And as I looked at many of these other veteran service organizations, what I found is you had to have a certain level of disability, you had to have a certain level of combat, you had to serve in a specific unit. It was always a box that you had to check before you could be admitted their service. And I could probably check a lot of these boxes, but what if I don't want to be defined by my wounds? What if I don't want to be defined by a disability or my disorder? What if I just want to say, I'm Tom, I've served, and I would like some community, and a lot of the other resources were very right of baying. If you've attempted suicide or if you've had an overdose, now this is an accessible resource to you. And I said, what if we can get a little bit more preemptive and proactive, and take all those barriers down, and open this up to active duty, open it up to National Guard, reservists, veterans, anybody from PFC to general, active duty, reservists, National Guard. If you've raised your right hand, you're in. And so I said, let's build a really large tent and have a seat at the table for everybody. And so I went out, and I was able to secure a 350-acre ranch out in Montana, because I believe that something happens that's special outdoors, out west, out in the mountains. And I said, this is your patrol base. And what was one of the biggest things I've had to kind of fight throughout this whole journey is that people would say, well, I was just I would say, like, you've been conditioned and programmed to think that if you didn't kill Osama bin Laden, that your service doesn't matter. Let me tell you that your service does matter, and you're welcome at this patrol base. That we built this patrol base for you. I'm an Air Force bulk fuel specialist. Yep, that's actually exactly who we built this patrol base for. Like, really, me? Yep. And also, we do the thing that you're into, and we do it free of cost, because there can't be any barrier. So it can't be like, oh, I would do that thing, but I can't afford it. It's like, okay, well, we fly you out, we pick you up at the airport, we feed you. It's like, oh, well, I would do that thing, but I'm not into what you guys do, So I didn't, if I created something for myself, I'm a grunt who likes to read. So it would be like a hiking and book club, right? But I had to make it so that everybody who, whatever their passion is or whatever their interests are, that they could see themselves at the patrol base. So I said, look, if you're into yoga, if you're into art, if you're into music, if you're into fishing, if you're into hunting, whatever you're into, if one of you want to walk point, we'll build the club around you. We'll provide you the resources, we'll provide you the infrastructure, and we'll take care of it. So if you want to go do that thing out in Montana, we'll make it happen. And if we can't do it in Montana, we'll make it happen still. So our surf club goes out to Camp Pendleton and does go surfing on the beach. Our dive club is going out to the Bahamas this summer. And it's so what is the thing that you're into? Okay, we're going to facilitate putting you in a community and getting you connected with other people to do that thing. Because I think there's two layers to that. Is one, relationships are built on communication and trust. And so there's a certain level of trust and ability to communicate, because we're both veterans because we both served. And so even if we're in different services, I can still talk to you to a certain extent because we both have that as our background. And now we also share common interests. So we like jujitsu, we like weightlifting, we like books, we like yoga, right? And so now we kind of speak two languages, which is going to facilitate the building of that community and the building of that connection. And so we run our program out there. We call it a return to base program. We run that out there in Montana, April through October. Every couple of weeks, we got a new group coming in. We usually bring about 15 out at a time. It's very austere. It's austere living right now. We'd like eventually for it to be a little less austere, but never. It's never going to be like a resort. You know, the idea is that nature is. You can go outside. It's a 5-star resort outside, and so we'll keep it. You know, some kind of barracks, but right now it's just some tents, and like I said, it's pretty tough. But and then the idea is, hey, we say re-enter friendly lines. You know, come around the fire each night and you know, build that community inside of friendly lines. If inside friendly lines where you can take off your gear and you feel like, hey, someone else has to watch for a little bit, I can rest and refit. But the idea of a patrol base is it's temporary. You got to go back out and you got to get back on patrol. And so what we're going to do is we're going to challenge you to go start a local chapter so that at any time people can rally all over the country at our local chapters. And so we've got 35 local chapters right now. And the idea of those local chapters is there's a social component and a service component, and they're enduring and sustainable so that you can always have that kind of community right there where you're at. And so every month you have PD Abbate Chicago and Boston and New York and Phoenix and you name it, right? They're every month they're going out on a hike, they're gathering for pizza, they're going to see a baseball game. And then every quarter they're doing some type of service project because I'm a narrative guy and this is storytelling, you know, and I believe that the story around veterans was that we're broken, damaged, disordered, unstable. And I just said, that's not the veterans that I know. We're actually men and women of character. We're men and women of service. So let's find a community partner who's trusted in the community and let's show up and let's challenge that narrative and say, no, we're not damaged, broken, or looking for a handout. We're actually out here and we're going to continue. We're men and women of service and we're going to continue to find ways to serve where our community needs us. And so that's that purpose part again, and then you're there with your tribe. And so that's just a little bit of kind of what we've been up to and where we're at and what we're doing.
Yeah, that's amazing work. So if somebody wants to learn more about some of the programs or how to get involved or, you know, find a local chapter in whatever city they live in or how to come out to Montana, how do they find out that information?
Yeah, best thing to do is go to pbabbate.org. Abbate is Abbate. We got a pretty active Instagram. You know, my challenge to everybody who wants to get involved and support is I say, hey, we're building the most inclusive, accessible veteran service organization in the country, and eventually we're going to have 17 million members because every veteran is going to want to be part of PB Abbate. So it's an all hands effort to build the patrol base. And so I don't know what your talent, your skill, or your passion is, but I need you to fill a sandbag. And so however you want to fill a sandbag in any component. So if you're an accountant or IT, or if you want to just come out and help clear some trees out in Montana so that we get the tent set up right, however you want to contribute and fill that sandbag. And so we actually have a Navy ensign PAO who runs our Instagram. She does a great job with that. She said, I want to be part of this and I have a talent and I want to fill a sandbag. And so she runs our Instagram. And so that page is pretty active. And we've got a couple of videos up on YouTube. If you search PB Abbate, you kind of see some of our programming in action out in Montana. Any one of those will kind of get you connected.
Okay, great. So we're coming up here on time, and just want to give you one last closing comment or thought, and then I'll just circle around with closing comments and a couple of announcements for our NVMM folks. So do you have any closing idea or thought on what we've talked about?
Yes, sir. I just thanks for this venue, this opportunity to share the work that you guys are doing at the museum is really just incredible, and I think just making a really huge impact. And I just encourage if you're active duty PFC listening or a retired general listening, you're in the Guard or you're in the reserves and you're looking for a community, if you're looking to get connected, I'd encourage you to check out PB Abbate and return to base. Thanks for the time today, sir. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet, Tom. And thanks for what you've done. Sebastian Junger's book, Tribe, it talks about much of what you're doing and how, the ancient warrior cultures, when the warriors came back to their tribe or their communities, they were welcomed back, and there was a storytelling component to it. And, they were able to really address some of the PTSD issues that we see today because of the lack of connection, the lack of storytelling, the lack of, finding your tribe when you get back to wherever it is you go to. So work that you are doing is so critically important to provide that connection and to provide, you think about it, you've got the camaraderie of service and in no other profession is anybody expected to, run to the sounds of the gun, except maybe a fireman or a police officer. And so you've got 200,000 men and women leaving the services each year with that ingrained into who they are. It's not, what they do, but it's who they are. And whether it was for 3 years or for 35 years. And so, as you talked about, you lose your identity. You take your uniform off, you don't have your rank anymore. You might be, Sergeant Jones or General so-and-so, but you are no longer that person. And you've got to really look hard inside and redefine yourself and who you're going to be and what you're going to do. And for many of us, it's kind of a struggle to come to grips with that. So awesome work. So thanks for joining us this month. Best of luck on the book release. I look forward to reading it. I'll have it on my nightstand pile of books once it gets released. So thanks for sharing the story of Matt. Thanks for sharing the story of Zach. Look forward to learning more about it. And more importantly, thanks for what you're doing to support veterans, irrespective of branch of service and irrespective of military occupational specialty. So just, PTSD month is upon us. And if you know somebody who's struggling with PTSD, please consider what PB Abbate is doing. If you might be interested in other options for support or resources to address issues that you might have, I would encourage everybody to go to our website. We've got a laundry list of government and private resources that folks can avail themselves of, and don't suffer in silence. If we're in a firefight downrange, we bring every weapon to bear to get out of that firefight. You bring the sister squads and platoons into the fight, your mortars, your close air support, your close attack aviation, drones, you name it, everything comes to the sound of the guns. And if you're struggling internally with demons, the same thing should be the case, where you call for help and everybody comes running, because I guaranteed if somebody was struggling and they reached out to a buddy, you'd have 15 or 20 folks drop what they're doing to help one another out. So we've got some summer events. Just want to bring up for everybody's awareness. So June 7th is the 80th Battle of Midway. We'll be celebrating that anniversary. We're going to hear directly from Mr. Jack Holder. He's a naval aviator. He's a Pearl Harbor survivor. He's in his late 90s. He flew 100 missions in World War II, including the Battle of Midway. So he will be here in Columbus at the National Veterans Memorial and Museum to share his story. It'll be a great event for our veteran voices. On July 7th is our next rally point. The topic is going to be veteran entrepreneurship. So those veterans who want to start their own small business, and we'll be able to share some lessons learned with those who've done it. And then August 5th through the 6th is our wellness weekend. We've got Tim Kennedy, Nate Boyer, and Phil Sussman coming in to talk jiu-jitsu and Tim's book, Scars and Stripes. And Nate is active in merging vets and players. And then Phil Sussman is the American yogi, and he'll be leading some yoga classes with us. And then for our resilience and wellness program that is ongoing, the primary leg right now is veteran jiu-jitsu. And we do that every Thursday at 6 in the morning, and then Saturdays and Sundays at 9 o'clock in the morning. And those classes are free to anybody who wants to come take advantage of them. Veteran, non-veteran, civilian, we welcome everybody. It's about the community, the connection, the camaraderie. And then on July 17th, that'll be our first veterans yoga class, similar to the jiu-jitsu that I just mentioned, but that will be the first of our weekly classes on Sunday at 9, and that'll be led by Jennifer Laredo-Ballou and Heather Hensley. Jennifer is a retired Army Master Sergeant. She's a Gold Star spouse. She's a Master Resilience Trainer. She's a certified yoga instructor, life coach. She does it all. But she's a great instructor. And Heather, in her own right, she's a Marine spouse and a trauma yoga certified instructor. So she brings some bona fides to the museum as well. So we're really excited about balanced warrior yoga that we're going to start here next month. And I've got to give a special shout out and a thanks to our supporting sponsor, Lane Aviation. They've been with us since the beginning. With our very first rally point way back when in 2018. So thank you to Lane Aviation. And then as the father of a USMA 2019 grad, I would be remiss if I didn't say go Army, beat Navy. Thanks for joining us today.
Wars aren't fought by countries. They're fought by people. Now, hear their stories in their own words. Honor their service in your own way. At the only museum in America that gives a voice to all our veterans. The National Veterans Memorial and Museum. It's more than a museum. It's the new